Thank you very much, Facilitator. I am Jason Braganza, representing the African Forum and Network on Debt and Development and the Civil Society Financing for Development Mechanism. Facilitator, the road to Seville is not just about agreeing an outcome document on debt. It is about safeguarding the future lives that are at present being mortgaged due to the diversion of critical financial resources to prop up a creditor-centric debt architecture. This debt architecture is sure to guarantee that the SDGs and Agenda 2030 will not be achieved, given that countries that have defaulted and countries that are in high risk of debt distress are not only going to default on their debt, but default on their development agenda. It is against this backdrop I will touch on some specific proposals in the Zero draft, and given the time constraint, details already submitted as part of our broader submission. Safe to say that we are welcomed by the analysis by Philippines and Palau and other member states in how they have identified the bias in the analysis of the debt section and preamble. But more specifically, as we welcome the call in the Zero draft for a debt architecture to be more development-oriented, we, however, recommend that the language is more robust and takes this outcome to a more ambitious level than in Addis Ababa back in 2015. This can be done by adding such phrases such as a human rights and decolonial debt development architecture, which creates creditors, in which all creditors effectively participate and ensure that a fair, predictable, coordinated, timely, and orderly restructurings are carried out. Specifically, in paragraph 50, we are proposing replacing path of debt sustainability with path of sustainable development and climate action. On 50A, we are proposing a rewording of this section, for example, to state, building on lessons learned from debt relief and debt resolution processes, we decide to establish an intergovernmental process in the United Nations to review existing debt architecture with the aim to establish a UN Framework Convention on sovereign debt that addresses the establishment of a fair and transparent multilateral sovereign debt debt resolution mechanism. On 50B, explicitly adding both lender and in borrowing countries that mandates transparent and fair governance and debt and management of sovereign debt. This is consistent with the broader objectives of FFD4 to be ambitious and build on from Monterrey, Doha, and Addis Ababa. On 50C, we propose adding debt relief instruments and measures in any form must fulfill principles of transparency and accountability, both in their negotiation and their implementation process, guaranteeing meaningful participation and the rights of local communities over the interests of private intermediaries. We welcome the calls by the Africa Group, Palau, and other member states on paragraph 50, section 50E, on the establishment on a intergovernmental process that will lead to agreeing a legally binding framework on debt, with binding principles as those from UNCTAD on responsible borrowing and lending. Facilitator, the fourth Financing for International Development Conference must agree a historic UN intergovernmental binding process that will develop and adopt a legally binding framework convention on sovereign debt. In conclusion, Chair, the civil society mechanism, we do wish to register also in the strongest possible way our grave concern over the modalities adopted by this process for closed-door negotiations. This is a direct contradiction to the spirit and rhetoric spoken about FFD4 and a moment to save multilateralism and put people first. We strongly encourage this House to reverse these modalities and get people back in the room, or the legacy of Seville will be that of closing civic space. Thank you.